Oh dear. Oh dear, Jonas Segal, what did you go out there and do? We had ourselves an article published by Segal here on The Athletic yesterday. And what I wanted to do was go over some of the names that were involved in the piece. Here is the title of the article, that in which will be linked in the description if you want to go ahead and read this. Maple Leafs defenseman trade targets. Who's out there to improve the blue line? Now, from this article, it's very self-explanatory. What Segal is doing is going over each defenseman that he feels could be valuable to this Toronto Maple Leafs team and assessing them all in a brief and fun article. If you want to read the analyses that's on here, then hey, that's your prerogative. It's behind a paywall, so I'm not going to screenshot that and show you myself. But to help us out with this entire thing, we are going to Spectors Hockey from yesterday, December 6, 2023, because what Lyle Richardson does is he summarizes the names that are included in this Athletic article. So, without further ado, let's scroll down into yesterday's Spectors Hockey piece. Jonas Segal looked at possible trade options to improve the Toronto Maple Leafs defense core. His categorized list includes Noah Hanifin and Chris Tanev of the Calgary Flames, David Savard and Mike Matheson of the Montreal Canadiens, Jake Middleton and John Mara of the Minnesota Wild, Jacob Chychrun of the Ottawa Senators, Eric Goodbranson of the Columbus Blue Jackets, Ilya Lyubushkin of the Anaheim Ducks, and Sean Walker of the Philadelphia Flyers. Now, some of these names have been in the rumor sphere for a while now. We've heard Chris Tanev's name tossed out there. We've heard, heck, even a big throwback, Jacob Chychrun's name has been tossed around there in rumors a whole bunch. Eric Goodbranson was hot news like 5 years ago. Sean Walker has entered that conversation as of late. But what I wanted to do in this video was go over the two Montreal Canadiens whose names are listed here too. David Savard and Mike Matheson. Now here's the thing, I don't want to screenshot any of the Athletics analyses on this because, as I said, it is behind a paywall, but Lyle Richardson on Spectors Hockey goes out there and gives his 2 cents here. The Canadiens could trade Savard to Toronto given his lack of a no-trade clause, but I don't think they're interested in doing that as they value his experience and leadership. Segal admits it's unlikely that Middleton, Matheson, or Chychrun become available. He doesn't advocate pursuing Goodbranson, but pointed out the Leafs GM Brad Treliving likes players with size and has a past connection to him. So, all Mike Matheson, Jacob Middleton, and Jacob Chychrun talk aside, let's talk about David Savard and Mike Matheson. As the article did state, David Savard is indeed without any trade protection. He's making $3.5 million a year to the end of 24-25 as a right-handed defenseman with some pretty good intangibles to his game. He's not the flashiest guy, he's not the most offensively skilled. Last year with the Montreal Canadiens, he had 20 points in 62 games played, but his value came with his leadership, his shutdown ability, and his presence amongst the blue line. He has a Stanley Cup to his name. He was a part of that Tampa Bay Lightning squad that won in 2021, actually against the Montreal Canadiens. So, Stanley Cup champion, good veteran guy, leadership experience player who has been on some bad Columbus teams the past few years. So, this is definitely a player who has all the intangibles you would want. Because he's on the IR right now, you could debate that this actually could be seen as somewhat of a valuable contract because his money wouldn't be directly on your cap. You would be able to hold on for him a little bit and see if you could make some other moves. Of course, when he comes back, you would have to reactivate him again, which changes the entire dynamic quite heavily. But as we had seen yesterday, the Toronto Maple Leafs are placing John Klingberg on the LTIR because he is out for the entire year. He's got year-ending surgery. So that itself is another piece of cap relief for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Add that onto Muzzin, add that onto the other names that are on the IR. There is some flexibility here that is opened up with the Klingberg departure. As for Savard, though, the article does state it pretty well that because Savard's leadership is valued by the Montreal Canadiens, there probably is some incentive to keep him. There's a really good shot blocking quality, which is unfortunately why he got hurt in the first place. And the article on The Athletic actually highlights the idea that, hey, if you throw Savard on a team where he is not relied upon as much as he is in Montreal, give him fewer minutes, give him a lighter load, and you'll probably see him improve. You'll put him in a better position to not get as tired and to make more out of the minutes he has, which is an interesting argument for sure, but it's tough to really compartmentalize when you acknowledge that the guy's been out for a while. Like, we haven't really seen him as of late, so trading David Savard to the Toronto Maple Leafs would not be the easiest, smoothest transition. You can't just wait for this guy to fix himself up and then boom, all of a sudden he's a top four shutdown defenseman type of guy. He'd probably need some time to recuperate and get back up to speed, and is that really what the Toronto Maple Leafs need? Is that something they could wait for? Honestly, I'm not too sure. And then there's the entire added aspect of whether or not the Canadiens would trade Savard to Toronto in the first place. They probably wouldn't want to be making too many trades with the Leafs, just considering the status of both of these teams, but of course we could say that crazier things have happened as well. But when it comes to the other guy, let's talk about Mike Matheson too. Because Matheson, as we have talked about over the past few weeks here, he has been one of the crazier Canadiens this season. His point production is insane. 18 points in 25 games played. He's on pace for 59 points in the season. He also is signed to a relatively alright $4.875 million till the end of 2026. I mean, $5 million for a defenseman who makes as many mistakes as Matheson probably isn't ideal, but for the point production, it's honestly okay in my opinion. Plus the power play time, he is actually going out there and blitzing out on opponents. There are some nights where he takes over shifts himself. It's kind of unexpected, but either way, Mike Matheson has a modified no-trade clause on his contract, so if he were to get moved, he would have to be okay with it, or the team he's getting sent to would not have to be included on his no-trade list. Is Toronto on that list? Who really knows? But the idea of the Toronto Maple Leafs going out there and getting Mike Matheson, of all people, a left-handed guy who has been more of an offensive guy this season than defense, I'm really not sure if that's the kind of guy they would want or even need in this scenario. Sure, you just lost John Klingberg, who was supposed to be a pretty much offensive-only type of guy. I don't think anybody saw John Klingberg coming over to Toronto and thought, hey, that's going to be a great defensive, blocking shots kind of guy. But Klingberg's also right-handed, Matheson is left, so there is a little bit of a difference there. With all the rumors going around saying that they'd want shot blockers, defensive guys, it makes sense when you have names like Chris Tanev or Noah Hannafin or even Eric Branson getting tossed into the conversation. David Savard makes sense in that context as well. But Mike Matheson, not so much. I don't really think he's a guy that fills the quota that the Toronto Maple Leafs seem to be looking for when it comes to these defenseman targets. Same thing could be said about Tyson Barrie. It's why I didn't really think the Barrie acquisition was one that people should have been on board with. I didn't really think that fit their narrative, but of course, I mean, everybody likes to see a story of a former Leaf coming back, especially after he's experienced some turmoil. He returns to Toronto and everything is all sunshines and rainbows after that. But Mike Matheson doesn't have that benefit of the doubt. He wasn't a former Leaf like Barrie is, so this is a completely out-of-the-blue type of thing, and even the article on The Athletic says straight up, hey, I don't really think they would actually trade this guy away, but it's an interesting type of skill set. The article on The Athletic even asked the question, hey, if the Canadiens wouldn't trade Savard away, why would they trade Matheson? Like, he is arguably, I don't know, it's up in the air, it's debatable. He's arguably one of the most important defensemen on the entire Canadiens right now. And considering the context in which he was sent to Montreal in the first place in that first Jeff Petrie trade, etc., this is a guy the Canadiens are using and they want to see more out of. So it doesn't really make sense, the idea of them sending him away to a Toronto team just down the road and giving him a stage in the Habs versus Leafs rivalry. So, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about this entire Leafs trade update. Whether or not you think these names, David Savard, Mike Matheson, or any of the other ones we had talked about too, Ilya Lyubushkin, Middleton, Chicherin, who else was there? Branson, Tanev, Hannafin, any of these guys. If you're a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about these guys being potential Leafs trade targets? We could talk a little bit more about them if you want to see a video about that, just kind of going over the extra names here. Of course, we only made this video because Montreal and Toronto, right? It's an interesting idea, and it's bound to get some good discussion going on. But if you're a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, would you want to make a trade with the Canadiens for one of these defensemen? Wait for Savard to get healthy and then make the trade, or acquire him early and allow him to fully recover within your system? Or does a Mike Matheson intrigue you as well? Do you want the Canadiens' best offensive guy who happens to be left-handed? If you're a Canadiens fan, what are your thoughts on the Habs trading these guys away to Toronto? Do you think this is an appropriate move? Would you rather keep these guys around? Does it depend on the trade price, whether or not you consider this or not? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below if you're a Habs or a Leafs fan about this idea. Links to the articles are going to be in the description to both The Athletic and the Spectre's hockey piece. I hope you enjoyed this video, and bye.